It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. It's Feedback Friday, and I almost forgot to record Feedback Friday. Bad Leanna, right, Cthulhu? Yes, you reminded me, Cthulhu. This is becoming very psycho polka dot door, isn't it? Do Americans know polka dot door? Is that a Canadian thing? I don't know. Anyway, it is Feedback Friday, and this is another one where it's going to be kind of catch-all comments part because, like I said, I almost forgot to record Feedback Friday, so it's going to be a bit rushed, but also because it just worked better. It's interesting because Monday's video and Tuesday's video, by the way, Monday's video, I just ended up not turning on monetization. I didn't want the problem. I didn't want the issues with YouTube. The content to me, being able to talk about the content was more important than, YouTube ads. So, because I do think that, I'll do the help support this channel. So if you want to help support my content, because sometimes I just do things I know I'm going to get into trouble in terms of monetization with, but I do them anyway. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK. So yeah, I do think, and I've said this for a while, that we can fight all we want about how much misandry versus how much misogyny exists in the world. The truth is both exist because fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to the dark side, right? And the fact that YouTube considers content that actually attempts to form bridges between people by, conceding something to the other side, that they consider this very positive content not advertiser friendly. I mean, this is part of the problem, right? It's why I always say monetized speech is not free. So, just a bit of insight into my process. This is why I don't chase the algorithm. This is why I don't, go hardcore on maximizing monetization. Communication and dialogue is extremely important to me. Listening to people is extremely important to me. Getting the facts right, or at the very least making well-meaning mistakes, is very, very important to me. So, stated for the record. And one of the things that I'm finding increasingly frustrating because of this is the not all requirement, that if you don't say not all, if you make any comment that's a generalization of any group, someone or multiple people loses their shit. It's tiring. It's a derail. It is, especially in things like Twitter, but also on YouTube, when someone's just talking. Come on, you're expecting a level of precision from people that is just not human. And if you want to be able to criticize groups, especially if you want to be able to criticize groups based on, the worst behaved people in a group, you have to be prepared to give some in order to be heard when, you want to point out, hey, y'all got a problem within your ranks. And it's just so frustrating to me that anytime I don't spend 20 goddamn minutes going, well, there's this and that and this and that, and deconstructing every single bit of fucking nuance on an issue, someone goes, not all. Waste of time. And I'm not going to be responding to that anymore. This is a shining example of how being too nitpicky can push someone in the other direction, right? It's so irritating to me that I am now less willing to consider that sensitivity than more, because I target my content to people who seem to have an open mind and aren't responding primarily through emotional reactance. I'm just being honest about where I'm at with this stuff because I need to conserve my energy, and I need to put my energy in the most productive places, and this isn't it. Because then I get questions that I actually think are made in good faith, and I have an opportunity to give another side to somebody who seems to have an open mind. And this is from a social conservative who said I got social conservatives wrong, but then they said, I think males and females are fundamentally different. What's wrong with that? I don't know how someone can possibly ask that question and watch my YouTube channel, because I don't understand why I am more fundamentally different from a male individual than a female individual. Why is this gender thing so divisive compared to any other thing? This is the not all thing. Like, of course there are exceptions to every frigging category, and any theory that deals with humans, any structure or policy that deals with humans and doesn't recognize that exceptions to every rule exist. And on gender, it's especially ridiculous because 25% of the population is not sex typical. So when you start going, I believe men and women are fundamentally different, what's wrong with that? Well, what do you mean by fundamentally different? Because if it's just, oh, men and women look different, well, the problem with that is you get someone like, say, a Rachel Maddow or an Ellen DeGeneres who don't want to dress girly. And, whatever you think about Ellen and whatever you think about Rachel Maddow, their appearances are relevant to telling jokes and reading news and offering their opinions, right? Why does somebody have to look properly male or properly female to do jobs that shouldn't hinge on looks? And be very careful, because I mentioned female personalities there. I don't like this trend now where guys have to have freaking lats the size of grapefruits to be considered superhero looking. Can we please, get different body types on superheroes that aren't just funny guy, right? Can we please, the standard of male attractiveness is shrinking, like the diversity of it is shrinking. And as somebody who just gets freaked out by shirtless Thor, even the whole shirtless Aquaman thing, I'm like, there's just something uncanny valley about that. Can we please not? I'd rather actors who embody the character. Like, for instance, Gal Gadot, I don't think she looks the way Wonder Woman looks in my mind, but just she nailed the acting on the character. Yeah, that's what I care about. I don't care that, certain TV, like Tyler, how do you pronounce his name? Hochler? On Superman and Lois. Like, yeah, that's a padded muscle suit for Superman, and I'm pretty sure they're digitally enhancing his chest whenever he's shirtless. I don't care, because he's so good in the part. I want skills first. And I don't think women should have to be, traditionally feminine to do jobs that have nothing to do with that. And I don't think men should have to be traditionally masculine. And that means, having a certain physical ideal. I think too many people get dismissed in general by society because society is too obsessed with what the standard person thinks is hot. And as someone who doesn't, I can't help what I personally find attractive or appealing, and I find it really frustrating when society tries to force a norm in that regard. You can say some things are more more common than others. But one thing I learned working in TV is the things that the media says men like and what men actually do like. Very, very, very different things. Men are individuals, and therefore different men find different things, attractive. And look at how upset people were about the firing of Gina Carano from The Mandalorian. I think part of that was just, I think she kind of got railroaded. But also, a lot of guys found her physically attractive. I found her physically attractive. And losing that on TV, even if it's streaming, right, that's sort of disappointing. Because whatever you think about her opinions, she was setting a more diverse beauty standard outside of, wrestling or MMA. And that matters because, yeah, the stereotyping that goes on based on what media considers hot, it's a problem. Individuality is so important. The ability to express one's individuality, within reasonable limits is important. And if a person is just not feeling masculine norms or feminine norms, they shouldn't be forced to conform to that because of the assumption that men and women are just inherently different. And anybody who doesn't conform to that assumption, there's something wrong with them. I just have a real issue with that. And at least in my line of work, it creates less good content. Those assumptions make less good content, right? Because even within men and women, well, there are gay men and there are straight men. And there are bisexual men and there are pansexual men. Same with women. So the idea that men and women are inherently different and men want this and women want that, well, then you get racial demographics and different, cultural things and this and that and the next thing. And what men, what women, what do you mean? You're talking about two giant groups of people. How can you make a statement that's sweeping and not stop and think, wait a minute, there are so many variables? But that's what ideology, that's what dogma does. And that's what's wrong with it. Anything that makes your thinking lazy is a problem. And that's sort of my whole through line with things. And one of the things that's kind of amazing about game design is when you start creating things that people have to play with, you learn. I learned this in TV when I first came in and started applying the shit I learned in women's studies courses. And I say shit because it was all wrong. None of it stood up to real world testing. And it's the same thing when you go in and you start doing things, the type of game, that we're making is, a retro JRPG. I'm not expecting a primarily female player base, but no one has complained about the fairy tale princess healer class character being the starter playable character. Because that's the constituency. That's the fan base. And if we go men and women are inherently different, we get into that, men don't want to play as women. Well, it really depends on the woman, right? Like plenty of guys are happy to play as Beelzebub. Just for an example, right? And well, Princess Sparkle Muffin and Beelzebub are inherently different. Solomon and Ian are inherently different. There are so many inherent differences in different groups of humans that going men and women are inherently different is meaningless if you stop and think about it. But you have to stop and think. And that's the problem with these dogmatic movements. They discourage you from stopping and thinking. And more on that in coming Manly Mondays. But I want to address one more thing before I run out of time and have to do my next meeting. The Star Wars stuff. I gave up reading comments on that video because of the number of things that are just, well, Obi-Wan's just bad. Obi-Wan's just bad. Obi-Wan Kenobi's just bad. It's just bad. It's just bad. It's just bad. The series was only half out when people made that comment because it was Tuesday and the next episode dropped on Wednesday. How do you judge it as a whole? Like, seriously, how? How do you judge anything when it's halfway done? I will agree that Obi-Wan Kenobi is cheesy, but bad I disagree, because cheesy feels like a throwback to Star Wars Episode 4. A New Hope is possibly my favorite of the Star Wars films. It's easy to say fucking Empire, but no, the original one, the one that started it all, it was a Saturday afternoon matinee homage sci-fi space opera with all the cheese that comes with it. You know, I remember when I interviewed Mark Hamill about his comic book, The Black Pearl. Please read it if you haven't. It's very good. But he said about the special editions, you know, George Lucas can go in and tweak all the animation and all the, you know, the visual things that he wants to fix, but I can't go back and tweak my acting, right? Something about the cheesiness, the corniness of that first Star Wars film was, I think, part of what made it catch. There was an earnestness to the cheese that added instead of took away. And I do think, as much as I think that they give little, you know, no spoilers, too much dialogue, and people, they are very clearly making that show as an homage to sort of Episode 4 for obvious reasons, right? Maybe not so obvious for the people that grew up on the original trilogy and Ewan McGregor is the only Obi-Wan Kenobi they know, but it does sort of seem like a tip of the hat to Alec Guinness and Darth Vader and Obi-Wan's big showdown in Episode 4. That was a deliberate creative choice, and not everybody's going to like it. Not everyone's going to get it. But that doesn't make it objectively bad. Again, furthermore, you can't say the series as a whole is objectively bad. It's not finished yet. And these are the sorts of things, these are the sorts of parameters we need to set on the objective elements of debates, so that we can respectfully go back and forth quite passionately on the subjective part of debates. It's that whole thing of you're entitled to your opinions. You're not entitled to a completely different set of facts. There's no such thing as two completely different set of facts. If you're coming at something in good faith, you can agree on a set of facts. There are other things, you know, all right, you feel more strongly about this and you feel more strongly about this, but in order to have a good faith debate, you have to have a shared set of facts. And the fact that the show is not finished, so you can't say it's bad objectively, you can only say I'm not loving it so far. You know, that is a reasonable baseline to have a discussion about it. If you can't even agree to that, I don't see why should I waste my time fighting this stuff. And you can argue me on that all you want. I repeat, I don't see why I should waste my time on that stuff. Meaning I'm not going to waste my time on this stuff, and yelling at me and being belligerent isn't going to change my mind. If you want to be persuasive, persuade. Don't browbeat. No one ever changed their mind because someone came on like a ton of bricks. They might shut up, but they don't change their opinions. They don't change their mind. And if you're sick of that, which is what a lot of the really hardcore Star Wars people are complaining about, don't do it to other people. Make sense? All right. Like I said, I have to cut this one short. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK. Have a great weekend.